Hi, I'm Tessa Holst. I'm the Assistant Dean of Students for the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, and I'm here with Rachel Porter, one of our success coaches. We're going to talk a little bit about academic probation and what it means. We want to help you come back and get back on track when it comes to probation. Next slide. A few things that we're going to talk about are satisfactory academic progress and how that relates to your definition of probation. Give you a little bit of probation basics. We're going to look at a guided reflection in terms of what can you do to improve your academic performance. We're going to talk a little bit about action planning so that you can develop an action plan to help you get off probation. And then we're going to have a few closing comments so that you can move on to graduation. Next slide. And I'm going to pass it off to Rachel.
Thank you, Tessa, and good evening, everyone. Today, we are going to embark on a journey together and one that revolves around the power of support. But before we dive in, let's address a term that might not have the best reputation around here: probation. Now, we know it's a word that is commonly used in higher education when a student's GPA falls below satisfactory academic progress standards, which we also refer to as SAP standards. But tonight, we're here to redefine it. So why don't we like the term probation? Well, there's a number of reasons, some which may be that it scares people. It may make students feel shame or embarrassment. It can trigger memories of negative experiences from previous institutions, or it might make a student feel like giving up. But fear not, because today we're changing the game. We're flipping the script on probation, turning it into a moment of comeback and growth. Before we move forward, let's address these initial feelings. Take a moment to think about how you felt when you found out you were on probation. Reflect on this and see if one of the reasons listed here resonates with you. The reason we're here is simple. We don't want you to feel unsupported. We want this to be your comeback moment. With the right plan, support, and your engagement, you can rise above this challenge. And we're so glad you're here with us. So now let's redefine probation with some positive meanings. You can choose from one of the following or even write your own. So the first example is probation, meaning a warning light on your academic dashboard. It's time for a tune-up so that you can graduate. Envision as if you're driving a car, and when you drive, sometimes an engine light might come up, right? That doesn't mean that you've failed at driving the car. It just means that there's an area, specifically the engine, that might need a little bit more of your attention in the near future. So in the same sense, we can kind of treat probation in that mindset that it's not that you failed, it's that it's a warning light to trigger, okay, what can I do differently to fix this area, the academic realm, so that you can come back stronger and get closer to graduation. A second example would be visualizing probation to be an academic status that can be reversed. When you hear the word probation, know that it is not forever. This is something that is a one-term status, and then depending on the route that you choose, may lead back to active status or final probation, as Tessa will tell us about in the near future. Third, you could view probation as an opportunity for a comeback. It's your time to double down. Some people find that they need that trigger to help them realize how much time and effort really does go into something. And in this specific example, your education, we ask a lot of your time and energy on top of the academic brain power it takes to learn the content of your courses. So if that's what you need to get back into it, take this as your opportunity for that comeback. Or our fourth example that we have is viewing probation as a growth experience that allows you to unlock your full potential. Your mindset is going to have so much control over how you handle any situation. So use this as one of those examples where you can view it as a growth experience and learn from this so that you don't have to ever think about probation again, and it will be something in the rear view window that you don't have to, that you have overcome and can move past. So as a success coach, I believe any of these definitions can be true. And so whichever one resonates with you, I would recommend that you write it down somewhere and help it keep you focused on your goal of getting off of probation. All right, next, we're going to discuss some rules of probation. So I will hand it over to Tessa to guide us through this segment.
Thanks, Rachel. What we have here is our probation roadmap. And the good news is you're at step 1. You're actually here taking the time to listen to this video. So step 2 is helping you reflect on your action plan. Step 3 is helping you submit your ASAP appeal. And step 4 is moving forward with your action plan so you improve your grades and stay off of probation. Next slide. What does academic probation mean? And this is where I don't want you to panic. It's a little complicated, but I'm going to give you the basics to help you understand. In order to graduate, all students must meet a minimum cumulative GPA and a minimum PACE. This is equivalent for all programs. But it's important for you to understand what those minimum thresholds are, because if you fall below those thresholds, that is when you can land on academic probation. So if you are an undergraduate student who is not a nursing student, your minimum cumulative GPA to graduate is a 2.0. If you are an undergrad nursing student, your minimum cumulative GPA to graduate is a 2.5. And if you are a graduate student, one of our master's or doctoral programs, then your minimum cumulative GPA to graduate is a 3.0. And so if your GPA falls below those thresholds at any time, that can land you on academic probation. PACE is very similar. All undergraduate students must meet a 66.6% PACE to graduate, while our graduate students must meet a 50% PACE. PACE refers to the amount of classes that you are successful in. So if you earn a W for withdrawing from a class or fail a class and earn an F, that is a negative impact on your PACE. But every class that earns a grade is a positive impact on your PACE. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about satisfactory academic progress, and you'll hear us refer to this as SAP quite a bit, there are certain minimums that I just discussed you have to meet to get off of academic probation. But once you do land on academic probation, you are there for one term and one term only. And so there are a couple things that must happen in order to remain in school. And one of those things is either you meet that SAP standard, you raise your GPA and or your PACE, or you submit an academic probation appeal, you get that appeal approved by the dean's office, and you pass all of your classes during your probation term. Passing your classes is just as important as everything else, because while you're on academic probation, you must always pass all of your classes. Next slide. Should you appeal? Why should you appeal? This is a question we hear quite a bit. And I want to make sure that you understand you don't have to submit a probation appeal, but it's important that you do for a number of reasons. It gives you an extension in the event that you cannot meet that minimum cumulative GPA or that minimum PACE at the end of the term. It's also for the fact that life happens. Sometimes you can be just going great, but by weeks 9 or 10, something else may happen and you may not be able to meet that minimum requirement at that point. So prepare for the worst, but it's better to be sorry, or better to be safe than sorry. So that's why we recommend that you submit that appeal. So our pause and reflect today in this section is, am I required to file an appeal? The answer is no, but it is highly recommended. And so we're going to pass it back to Rachel to talk a little bit about some guided reflection.
Thank you, Tessa. All right. Now, and hopefully all of you are taking notes on what Tessa was saying about the SAP requirements. If not, know that you've got that support here to help remind you. You can always look back at those slides later as well. But during this time, we will stop to reflect on the questions similar to the ones that will be asked on the SAP probation appeal form. This reflection will help you prepare to write the strongest appeal you can to have the highest chance of approval. Let's try to get to the root of your academic struggles. And if you haven't already, please take out a piece of paper and something to write with, or you can open a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document on your computer. And so I'll give you just a minute to go grab that piece of paper if you haven't yet, or open up that document. All right, now let's get ready to go deep. Taking the time to stop and reflect is important for getting back on track. So these first two questions will be combined to make up the first question on the actual SAP appeal form. So let's look at the first question, which says, what was happening in your classes academically leading up to your probation status? Here we are focusing solely on the academic side of things. Were you having issues navigating the course portal? Or was the course content more difficult than you had anticipated? Take a minute to remember how you felt about your academic proficiency last term. So this second question is about personal struggles. What was going on in your real life that may have contributed to your academic struggle? This could be a wide variety of issues. As Tessa mentioned, life happens sometimes. So maybe you were experiencing some financial distress, or were you struggling with some personal relationships? Or possibly you were unable to focus on your coursework because of the state of your mental health. Academic deans understand that these personal struggles can affect your academic progress. So let's reflect on this question for a moment. Please also reflect on if these problems you experienced are ongoing or if they have since been resolved. This may affect your action plan to move forward. Now, this third and final question correlates to the second question of the official SAP appeal form. As you create your action plan to get back on track, think about one thing that you can change right now that will help you be more successful. Have you utilized the different resources available to you right here at Purdue Global? Familiarize yourself with these resources, such as the Academic Success Center, the PG Library, and PG 411. Also, consider who can help you stay accountable as you stay on course. Maybe you can allow a friend or family member to join you in supporting you by checking in on your progress. Or you may need to have a talk with your significant other or other loved ones to see if they may be able to take on some more responsibilities around the house or in your personal life so that you may be able to have a little bit more time to focus on school. So take a moment to think, what is something right now you can change? Thank you so much for going through that reflection time with me. I will now pass it back to Tessa to hear how we can create the strongest case for your appeal.
Thanks, Rachel. We want to talk a little bit about a little more detail about what Rachel had you reflect on. So when it comes to filing your SAP appeal, the number one thing you have to, and this is number one, meaning the first thing you have to keep in mind is you have to explain to us what happened. Tell us what that circumstance is and what caused it and if it's been resolved. Then we're going to move on to having an action plan. What can you do differently to help you improve your grades? This is going to need to be defined, and it's going to have academic steps that helps us understand how those grades are going to improve. I need to see an improvement in your grades. So your action has to be reflected in the work that you're currently doing. We need to see that your grades are improving. And finally, I need to see that your appeal is free of errors. Sloppy appeals that have lots of typos and grammatical errors are not appeals that get approved. So it's very important that you keep those 4 steps in mind as you're writing your SAP appeal. Next slide. This is what your where you can find the actual academic probation appeal on your PG portal. It will be in this quick links section. And the good news is that very recently we've updated this so that as your appeal moves through the process, you will be able to see the results. So once your appeal is submitted, you will be able to see on this page that your appeal is submitted. Once it is approved, you will be able to see that it is showing as approved. Next slide. This is a screenshot of what the actual appeal form will look like as you're starting to work on your appeal. I think what is really important here is that you take the time and slow down. Do not rush through this process. This is where you want to give your best impression to me or one of the other deans whom you have never met before. Your writing in this area is going to prove very important to getting your academic appeal approved. So take some time, think about what happened, and then think about some of those academic areas where you can regain points that you may have lost in your last term. So think about, did you miss seminar? Did you possibly were late just posting to the discussion board, or maybe did not post enough? Did you have a late assignment that you were docked points? These are areas that you can build into your action plan to show improvement. Next slide, please. Just a recap of what you're going to see and what our expectations are when it comes to that academic probation appeal form. Again, you're going to tell us what happened, identify that root cause, identify what steps you're going to take to show improvement. We're going to look in your classroom and we're going to see if your grades are improving. So this is where it's important to make sure that your work is reflecting the actions that you're writing about. And then we're going to look at your writing in terms of making sure that you're giving the best impression. This writing in your appeal is a reflection on the type of work you are submitting within the classroom. So if you're submitting a sloppy appeal, that may lead us to believe that your grades are a reflection of your writing, and you want to keep that at the best writing possible. And last but not least, as I've mentioned before, you must pass your classes while you're on academic probation. Our pause and reflect question is, what if I rush through my appeal and it has multiple typos and writing errors? If you rush through your appeal and that's the answer, then you need to pause and go back and fix that. If it's too late to fix it, there is a risk that your appeal will be denied and you cannot resubmit. Next slide, please. Deadlines. This is equally important as you're working on your academic probation appeal. It is important that you submit your appeal before the last 2 weeks of your term. You want to make sure that it is in our system so that we have time to get it reviewed. You will actually receive appeal email with the decision once a decision is made. We will have all decisions made no later than the end of the term. Keep in mind that if your appeal is approved, it is considered conditional because, as I've mentioned before, you must pass your classes. If you do not pass your classes, you will be academically dismissed. Next slide. SAP appeal decision. So like I said, hopefully your appeal is approved. And if it is, that means you move into final academic probation. Final academic probation is a maximum of 3 terms. You may need 1 term, you may need 3. But this gives you that extension we talked about earlier to help you meet the minimum thresholds to hit your cumulative GPA and PACE requirements. However, if your appeal is denied, don't panic. Instead, talk to your student advisor. There may be cases, and there are cases, where students have had their appeal denied and still met the minimum thresholds and were allowed to move back into academic status of active and continue on to graduation. If that is not the case, you will want to focus on your classes and make sure that you finish strong. You will want to have strong grades in the event that you are academically dismissed and have to move on to another university. He will want to make sure that your grades are strong enough for transfer credit. And our pause and reflect question today is, if your appeal has been denied, can you resubmit? And the answer is no. And this is why it is so important to make sure that your appeal is exactly how you want to be presented to the dean's office. All decisions are considered final. Next slide, please. So what happens next? Once your appeal is approved and you've moved on to academic final probation, again, that is a 3-term stance in terms of how long you have to bring that GPA up to those minimum requirements. But while you're on final probation, you must also meet other requirements during each final probation term. And I know this gets confusing, but during the terms that you're on final probation, you have to have a minimum term GPA. So that's the current term that you're in. You must have, if you are an undergrad student who is not a nursing student, a 2.5 term GPA. That is about the equivalent of a B-. If you are an undergrad nursing student, you have to have a term GPA of a 3.0, and that is about the same as a B. If you are a graduate student, those master's and doctoral students, the term GPA is a 3.5, but keep in mind, we do not have negatives or plus at the grade level at a graduate program. Therefore, a 3.5 is the equivalent of an A for grad students for each term on final probation. Here again, you have to pass all your classes. We highly encourage you to retake your failed classes immediately. The fastest way to bring your cumulative GPA up is to repeat a failed course. We do recognize that sometimes some courses are going to be on the rotation schedule and they may not run immediately, but we recommend you take them as soon as they do run. We will give you 3 additional action plans, and we would like you to discuss those with your student advisor. They may be something like going to a time management webinar, or they may be having you visit the Academic Success Center, or maybe having you review some of the resources that are offered through our tutoring services. But make sure you're reviewing those action plans and helping you. They're designed to help you get off probation. Our pause and reflect question is, what happens if I don't pass one or all of my classes? And this is where you will be academically dismissed. So it's very important to remember to pass your classes. You can do this. You've got this. I've seen many students who are on academic probation get off probation and move on to graduation. And we can't wait to see your name at the top of the list. Good luck, graduates. Thank you.
Thank you.